our first sort of, community building event. I'm just so excited to be here, also with these two amazing people. So we're just gonna kick it off. And also, if you guys have questions as we go, just interrupt us. We want this to be super interactive. We have tons of, Charmaine doesn't like that because we already gave her a list of prepared questions, so she's like, what? But please interrupt us as we go if you guys have any questions. So let's just kick it off. So can you guys introduce yourselves? Tell us a little bit.
Charmaine,
we'll have Charmaine first.
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Taking me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm Charmaine Barney. I am the managing director at RKE. It's a CPA firm based in Torrance. We have about 130 professionals. I am one of the leaders in our consulting practice and offer accounting services for our clients.
Hi everyone, I'm Lachmund, corporate controller. I've been in the apparel industry here in LA for over a decade. Just as a point of reference, when we first got started, we were on Magento. That's how it started. And I'm an early adopter of Blue Onion, and we go way back because when we first adopted Blue Onion, Lyndsey was my customer service rep.
Actually, so that's a great segue into the first question. So, Lee, how have you seen the e-commerce landscape change and evolve over, the last 10 years, whether it's, systems or financial operations or just technology?
Yeah. Well, there's pre-pandemic, there's pandemic, and then there's post-pandemic. So anyone who is in the space pre-pandemic, apparel companies were just getting into it, testing the waters. It was slow growth. But what they didn't know is that when the pandemic hit, if they had already laid the groundwork, they could really lean in and their companies could survive, and there was an explosion of growth. And so now it's just, as we all know, it's taken over. I mean, it's bigger than wholesale, it's bigger than retail for a lot of emerging companies. So it's a really exciting time.
I think it's funny that you say that because you're pre-pandemic. I went way back because when I started my career, wholesale was the only thing. And so when e-commerce came into the platform and into the space, when you're looking at financial statements, e-com, don't worry about it, it's immaterial. Don't worry about it. However they account for it, it's not that material to the relative size of the business. And so as we've seen, in the space, we have clients that slowly went into e-com, and now we have all of these businesses that are only e-com. And so it's really important to understand the accounting for it.
Yes. All right. Maybe switching gears a little bit, what are some challenges that you faced in your role, and maybe specifically dealing with some of these really large data sets? Because I think that's really one of the challenges with e-commerce. That's maybe a little bit different than what's been done in the past, is hundreds of thousands of transactions that you're now trying to figure out, what do we do with this?
Well, when we adopted or looked at Blue Onion, which was 3.5 years ago, when you think about all of the disparate data sets, you've got your data coming from Shopify, you've got your bank transactions, you've got all of your merchant processors, you've got the returns, whichever return we loop, you got globally, and how do you pull it all together? So we had actually contracted a consulting company to do that for us, and it took 5 days at least out of my month-end close. I couldn't even get going until day 6. So, you actually had sent an email to Travis,
I think I did, yeah.
and we reached out, and I have to say that when we got the demonstration, it's not very often that I'm impressed or see a game changer, but this was a game changer because I can get it on day 1 and don't have to wait. So, so when you think about just pulling all of the data together and having access to it, in most instances, real time, it's a game changer for the space.
I think when it comes to dealing with the data, you know, as an accountant, you're always trying to chase the pennies. And you're always trying to find, you know, what's my exact number? What's the report that's going to tell me exactly what the right answer is at the end of the month? And until we had Blue Onion, there was, you know, files upon files upon files of, you know, bank information, transaction level data, and literally finding the transactions that make up each deposit. And I will tell you that it is one of the most challenging things when you try to explain to a client, like, hey, this is going to take us probably 12, 15 hours to get through this reconciliation. They don't quite get it because it seems like it would be very straightforward. But with e-commerce, with how difficult it is to, you know, get all of the data from Shopify, get all of the data from the bank, and then actually figure out what your merchant fees are. Returns don't even start. Don't start with the returns because then we get into gift cards. It's really, really complicated. But, you know, it's really nice to have that data at one touch, for sure.
Thank you. All right, and then maybe a slightly different question, because I think we all feel, and I feel this at Birchbox too, it's never like, oh, we have so many extra people on the accounting team, right? You're always operating really leanly. You know, they're never like, have these extra 10 headcounts, right? So how do you guys think about building and scaling, but also maintaining a great team as, you know, the business grows too and changes?
Well, again, going back to the pandemic, when you think about it, it was a challenge for the finance department because every company cut back. So, you know, the company that I worked for at the time, we had a 25% reduction in the staff as e-com was exploding. So how do you handle that with fewer people and ask the people that are there who are homebound, well, could you work a little harder for me, please? So, you know, the takeaway from that is always trying to find technology to help you, right? Because you don't really need people to do Excel sheets to compile data. Blue Onion in this instance can do it, so why not start there and then have your team do the analysis? And one other thing that I want to point out is that what you're doing here with Blue Onion is what I call old school cash and accrual accounting simultaneously. It's like
I think for us, the challenge is, you know, dealing with so many different clients that we're trying to help close their books in a timely manner. And, you know, you want to meet, you know, the 5th, the 10th, the 15th deadline that they have. And it becomes extremely taxing for us to manage so many different reconciliation processes for so many different accounts that we really excel with process and technology. You need to have good processes in place to be able to scale, and you need to have technology to help you, compile that information so that you're not wasting time, you know, gathering this piece of data, gathering that piece of data. If you know exactly where it comes from, who's going to give it to you and by when, then you can be really successful and very timely with the information.
And Charmaine, maybe you can, just because we're trying to make this like a super tactical for everybody here,
Sure.
Can you give maybe some examples of different processes too that you find like have been helpful in terms of expediting that?
Yeah, absolutely. Specific to revenue recognition?
No, I mean really anything. Not even just rev, but really sort of anything for month end.
I mean, we've really been investing in technology, right? We've spent a lot of time researching different tools. This one in particular has saved countless hours in terms of revenue recognition, reconciliation, and honestly more so accuracy. It's really having accurate information versus, you know, you've given it, you know, the 80% of time, and then the last 20% you're like, look, it's close enough, right? But this is really more accurate. The other technologies that we've, invested in is we've invested in different softwares that allow you to enter in bank activity automatically, auto entry, really looking at things that take the person out of the situation. Even one of the softwares gathers bank statements. That, it's not a lot of time, but if you think about it across how many accounts, all your clients, it's it pays dividends. Awesome.
And so, talking about technology, sometimes it can be really overwhelming. There's a lot of different software solutions out there. You know, when do you guys think teams should start thinking about, you know, software solutions, technologies for, you know, maybe different stages of the business life cycle?
Well, having gone through it 3 or 4 times now, it's never too early, right? Because if you think next year is the right time to do it, you'll be too late, right? So invest in the technology, it can support the growth, and you're not taxing your team. And that's a big part of it is, you know, you can't go to the CPO and say, I need more finance team members. They'll be like, no, I don't think so. It's just, it's not high up on the priority list. So it's incumbent in all of us to find the technology and get it in early, because when you get it in early, you have time to vet it, right? It's like what Charmaine was saying, and the beautiful thing about Blue Onion is I've had it so long now, I trust it. I know it's accurate. But if you put in a system early, you have time to vet it, and then as it grows, you understand what it is, and it will support your growth. I do want to say, as completely separate, I've always invested heavily in a digital workflow for AP, and so that would be something that I would just tell everyone to look into, because I've gone it's been many years I've gone completely paperless with my whole AP process.
Amazing. Thinking about new technology.
I think it's not just about the technology, right? There's Blue Onion, which is fairly seamless, but there's all of the other technology that's out there that isn't necessarily as seamless. And so I think that if anybody's looking to invest in new technology, you also have to invest the time and the resources necessary to be successful with any investment in technology. Things take time. You know, I'm going to go back to process. The processes are so important, and if you implement a software and you're not ready to do so, it's not readiness in terms of how large your company is. It's readiness in the time invested to be successful with any implementation. You know, I can't name all of the ERPs that I've seen implemented poorly, but I will tell you that often we get a client that has had a poor implementation, and a big part of what our team does is figure out how can we get them to be successful. What additional tools or what processes do we need to be put in place in order to make this thing work? Sometimes, if you're looking in the history, there's not much you could do, and some, you know, Excel's your friend. But, you know, when you're looking to the future, it's all about what process can we put in place to make sure that there's as little touching of these things as possible, so that there's the reliance on the system, right? You have that reliance on a system that can be successful. ERP, like, especially if you guys are thinking about ERP implementations, is really, really, really takes dedication, time, effort, energy, you know, and then in the interim period, when you are looking to do order to cash reconciliation, you know, there's all these types of tools out there that can help you kind of in those way stages as you get to that point.
Yeah. I just had another thought, which is make your e-com director your best friend. Because they are going to be implementing things and they never tell finance. So, you know, it's so important that you know what's going on so that you can get trained with customer service team, whatever it is. But, you know, e-com is moving at lightning speed, and they're just implementing things because they're talking to the CEO and say, yeah, do it. And then all of a sudden, finance finds out, and, you know, like everything, we have domestically. So make the e-com director your best friend.
All of those added apps, right? It's really just, you know, they think that they're adding an app, it's going to help everybody, and it might help the customer, or it might help them see data better, but then it, you know, messes with the back end, and then you're having a challenge. I would say just be careful when you're implementing new returns processors. All returns processors have, you know, little quirks that you need to work through. And then the other thing is, if you have anything that's going to manage your gift cards, and you have, you know, just call us.
Can we not talk about gift cards, please?
Call your accountants first.
So yeah, because you guys have both seen, you know, several e-commerce companies, all at different stages, are there any, so besides Blue Onion, are there any systems or tools, that you guys have used that you've liked, and sort of how have they helped you and in your teams?
Yep. Honestly, I've invested in, I don't want to call it outsourcing, but offshore, because you have to have a certain number of people just to process. And in the United States, it's incredibly expensive to get a basic AP clerk. So, there are so many opportunities out there, and, with teams and everything that we learned during the pandemic to work remotely. What did we learn? Well, we don't have to be in the office. We can be in apartments across LA. Well, it doesn't matter if you're in LA or New York or Manila or down in Costa Rica. And what you'll find is an incredibly educated, hardworking workforce. So that would be something that I would say. You have your core people here in the US, and then say, I'm going to leverage that with people offshore. And you'll be blown away with what you're doing.
I think that, going back to automating your AP process, there's Bill.com that, helps our clients not only automate it and make it easier for finance, but make it easier for the business owners to be able to see what's going through their process, right? The approvals are better, the controls are better. The other thing that I would think is credit card management, right? So any of the platforms that manage spends, with setting budgets for spends, they're all the same. It doesn't really matter, but implementing one of those is critical for sure. It also helps you with not having to chase down receipts. Yeah, one more.
You still have to chase down receipts. We've been using Concur for many years, and getting people to actually do their expense report is a very different thing. But it is a huge leg up, and there's a lot of advantages to that, or a lot of the ones that have cards associated. You just have to evaluate which one is right for your company, but I do this.
And Lee, that's actually a really good point. So as people are evaluating, new tools, different tools, like what are some questions you think that they should be asking, maybe that people aren't really thinking about?
Yeah, I'm old school, and I go back to the RFP process. It doesn't have to be a really formal RFP process, but sit down and ask yourself the question, like, what are we trying to solve for? Like, it's one thing to say, well, go out and get an expense management, but it may not solve the question you're trying to answer. So if you're very clear going in on what you're looking for, then you'll have success on with that. But talk to the stakeholders, talk to the CFO, the CEO, talk to the people in the finance team who work with you and for you, because they're in the trenches. They'll know what the issues are, and if you're really clear about what the problem or issues you're trying to solve, then you'll be successful.
Same.
Yeah.
We practice that.
Yeah, I like that.
A lot of rehearsal.
I like that. And then, can you tell the group a little bit about your process around order to cash, around revenue recognition, maybe just before Blue Onion and then after Blue Onion?
No problem. I think prior to Blue Onion, and the landscape has changed so much, right? When we first started having e-commerce platforms, every platform had multiple payment processors. So we were talking about, 5, 6, 7 different processors. After the pandemic, and most recently, those have started to condense a little bit. But prior to that, we were dealing with 5 or 6 different processors, pulling it into each platform, going and grabbing all of that data, finding all of the matching transactions, and that's just the cash reconciliation. We're not even talking about deferred revenue and making sure that the revenue is being picked up in the right period. I mean, that's, thank God we're here, I mean, prior to this, like we were pulling shipment reports, and I mean, you still have to pull receiving reports. That's a whole different thing. But shipment reports, and then trying to match that up to the orders and the cash, and so you really have 3 different things that you're trying to reconcile at one time. So that process was extremely cumbersome. Multiple accounts, multiple clients, days. Right? There's some staff in here that managers now that are really, really good at that whole process. And there's a lot of people that are really good at the new process that takes, you know, a couple of hours, and you're there, and, you know, I'll tell you now, I vet every single one of those processes, even through Blue Onion, because I'm super crazy like that. And we will, you know, if there's an issue, we call Lyndsey, and, you know, and she solves them. And that's, I mean, that's really what it is. Like, I wouldn't trust the software. I don't. But I do trust that you'll find an answer. That's what we can say, for sure.
Nope. That's a really complicated question because you did the best you could and you hoped for good results, and it was never perfect. And that's just the truth. And so with Blue Onion, it is audit standard. So there is no question when you take it to audit or to your CPA firm or whoever's going to review, it will pass. So that's the biggest thing. And prior to that, like Charmaine said, you're pulling a lot of files. You're relying on the accuracy of the data, which may or may not be complete. So there's just so many variables. So you're just saying, okay, this is my best guess.
Close enough.
Close enough.
All right, and then, so maybe more general question, you know, what recommendations or advice would you give to other companies looking to improve their financial operations? I know we talked about technology and processes and sort of team management, so maybe just something, really tactical on the advice side. I mean, there's, as consultants, right, we see the gambit of different finance teams within organizations. And I think speaking to business owners, it's really investing in your team and believing, you know, their needs as real legitimate needs. When, you know, finance isn't always the most supported because we're cost centered, right? We're not the ones that's driving revenue. We're not the ones that are doing that. But, you know, really investing in, you know, quality personnel, you know, not sharing information when you want to use a new tool or you want to invest in new technology, really having that interdepartmental coordination is critical to the success of any organization. So I don't think it's really specific to finance, but it's just really sharing information, being upfront, you know, and investing in the entire organization. For sure.
I would answer that question by saying, be the mentor. You've got a lot of young people on the team who want to do a good job, they want to learn, they want to grow, so you have to be that example, you have to be that steady force, be the mentor. I look at it, I laugh. I mean, I can't even tell you how many month-end closes I've done. I didn't want to do another one because I don't care. But when I train someone on my team and I see that light bulb go off, I'm like, now my job is done, right? They get it, they will grow, and now we can take them to the next level. So you just invest in the right people, and then train them in the technology, and train them to audit the technology. You know, years ago, I had a mentor who, I loved Excel, and I would have great Excel sheets, and I would send them into my CFO, and he'd call me into the office, and he'd be like, Lee, I've told you, don't trust the spreadsheet. You have to audit it. So he doesn't. That would be my point: is really mentor and lean in and train your team. So.
All right, I think we're gonna open it up to questions. If anybody has any. Oh, yes.
So, Charmaine, you know, undoubtedly, hundreds, if not thousands of clients that you probably
faster.
In the absence of a traditional PO and receivables kind of solutions for financing, this is the basic e-commerce. What kind of tools that we see your clients utilize in effective management? Because there's a lot of these easy tactical solutions out there, but not all of them are great or cheap.
That's a tough question. Most of our clients are in this e-commerce space, right? You don't really have the traditional financing. You might have a line of credit that you're able to get, but a lot of them that are struggling, that are not, cash flow positive every month, they'll look to tools like, with Shopify specifically, they have Shopify loans where they'll borrow against the receivables and then they'll pay it back. It's expensive, but when you're in that position, you kind of have to do what you got to do. But there's a lot of finance professionals here tonight, and if there's anybody that's looking for financing, I think Matt's one of them. And I think there's a lot of the times owners are really funding these businesses, right? Until they get off the ground, it's really owner finance, whatever their personal lines show until you get there. Wait, sorry. Any other questions? Any other questions? Can I ask a question? Oh, that's right. I love it. All right.
All right. So, as far as kind of e-commerce goes, like what's been, I guess, the experience that shipping and utilizing third-party warehouses at an efficient level? I've always kind of seen third-party warehouses as sometimes can be really messy, reporting stuff to be but I guess I'm just asking you, working with third-party warehouses, what's the effective time?
You want to go first, Charmaine?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So when it comes to, I'm going to start with the revenue recognition side and dealing with third-party warehouses. A big part of how we use Millennium as a tool is we pull in the shipment data into, but there's a tool that pulls it into Shopify, and then we're able to use that data in order to recognize revenue based on shipment. But there are 3PLs that don't integrate, where you do have to pull the information, and so what I would say is, from a revenue recognition standpoint, really making sure that the shipment data is easily pullable, easily digestible, really in your vetting process before you kind of get into bed, is really important. Because if you don't have the data necessary to pull it back into your system, whatever system that may be, it's going to be cumbersome. It's going to be difficult for you to figure out your revenue recognition. From an operations standpoint, there's challenges with their own warehouse. There's challenges with third-party warehouse. We're constantly doing evaluations for, is it the right time to migrate to a 3PL? Is it cost prohibitive? Does it make sense? What are overall costs associated with that migration? And what are the costs of not migrating? Which is some of the better questions that we get, for sure.
I look at it from an ERP implementation standpoint also, that you would want to integrate so that you've got good data. Again, reality is I view 3PLs as a necessary evil. It's like you date, you fall in love, you get married, you get divorced. So it's important that you have somebody on your team who knows how to manage a 3PL, because it does take management and oversight and going out there. They do a good job, but they do just enough to get by. So, it was something I was talking to Travis about moving to New York. Vet your contract carefully and make sure whatever your out clause is, that it's built in. Because nobody ever thinks about getting a divorce but it's going to happen. And they'll go to the contract. So, you know, I mean, you never want to think about that, but, you know, it's a service that they're providing, and you decide to go to another 3PL, or everybody wants to run in Canada or Mexico now. Well, so make sure that you've got your exit strategy built into the contract.
Anybody else? Well, can I close off with one question? Well, I know a lot of e-commerce companies are actually going from cash to accrual because they're growing so fast. What are your advice or suggestions, things to watch out for these e-commerce companies that are going through the transition or in the midst of transition, or even have both current and given process? More question, I know, but
No, it's not.
Not at all.
Just implement glue on it.
Like that.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen it all. I've seen, you know, have a system, have no system, all cash basis, but not really like maybe half of the transactions are in, you know, accrual-ish. Right? There's all sorts of different versions of financial statements out there, and I think that one of the biggest challenges is really just taking the step back and figuring out what's important in that process. Mm-hmm. Because you can present financial statements on cash basis. I don't recommend it. Any of our clients, it's a no-go. But it's really important to be able to, you know, as you look to the future, plan for the future. What does my future look like? Am I going to grow this business to a certain level and sell it? Am I you know, going to need to get bank financing, and I'm going to need to present those financial statements? So it's really not an option at a certain point. And ideally, you do it at onset, because when you don't do it, then you meet people like me, and we help you do it much later.
yeah.
Well, Charmaine made an important point that everybody should think about is you may not be public, you may not need an audit, but you may need to go to the bank. So solid financial statements are important. So however or whatever level, consistent, real financial statements. Because you may want to go to the bank and say, you know, I need a loan based on my inventory, or I need working capital, and that's the first thing they're going to ask for. So, you know, find that right balance, but definitely financial statements.
Yeah, do you want to wrap up? Yeah. Well, can we give a round of applause to our 3 amazing